In the smoldering aftermath of a forest fire in Alaska, Ranger Eli sifted through ash and soot, his boots crunching over scorched underbrush. The silence was haunting, broken only by distant birds returning to a changed sky. Then he heard it, a whimper, soft and desperate. Eli dropped to his knees, pushing aside debris until he uncovered a trembling German Shepherd puppy, half buried and burned around the edges, eyes glazed with fear and confusion. The puppy didn't bark or retreat. Instead, he locked eyes with Eli, something in his tiny frame too fragile for the wild, yet too stubborn to give in. Eli gently lifted the pup, his breath catching at how light he was. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" he murmured, wrapping him in his flannel jacket. He didn't know then how deeply this one small life would change everything. Eli brought the pup to his cabin, small, isolated, half swallowed by wilderness. That night, the puppy slept close to the fire, curled in a towel nest. Outside, moonlight gleamed off fur. 3 bears stood silently at the edge of the clearing, a massive sow and her twin yearlings, now nearly grown. Eli watched them from the porch, heart pounding, not in fear, but awe. The mother bear, whom Eli had named Uma over the years, seemed to look straight through him, into the cabin, to the puppy. She huffed, low and measured. Eli stood still. Something unspoken passed between them, and then they vanished into the trees. That night, as the pup whimpered in dreams, a bear's deep growl echoed back from the woods. Comfort. Somehow, comfort. 2 days later, Eli went to fetch water from the creek and left the pup curled in the sunlight outside the cabin. When he returned, he dropped the bucket, empty. The pup was gone. No signs of a struggle, no blood, just tiny paw prints leading into the pinewood trail, and beside them 3 enormous sets of bear prints. Panic surged. Eli followed the trail for miles, calling, stumbling, but dusk fell before he found the clearing. There, on a mossy bed beneath an old cedar, lay the pup, alive. Beside him, Uma loomed like a mountain, and her 2 young bears sniffed the pup curiously. He didn't run. He wagged his tail and climbed onto one of their backs, nipping gently at their ears. Uma didn't move. She simply huffed, then nosed the pup closer to her cubs. Eli sat at the edge of the clearing, breath frozen in his throat. He should take the pup back. It was unnatural, unsafe. But the puppy, he had never looked so at home. Nestled between 2 bears, he looked like a misplaced spirit that had finally found his tribe. When Eli stepped forward, the puppy didn't run to him. Instead, he tilted his head, gave a soft yip, and lay back down between the cubs. Something inside Eli cracked. He whispered, "You chose them." And though it felt like a goodbye, it wasn't final. It was the beginning of something wilder, stranger, and more beautiful than he could imagine. Over the following weeks, the puppy, whom Uma's cubs began calling with grunts and nuzzles, learned the ways of bear life. He followed them to berry bushes and copied their movements, standing awkwardly on his hind legs to reach low branches. When the bears waded into a stream, he bounded in after them, splashing and slipping, barking in delight. He couldn't growl like them, not yet, but he tried. Low, humming sounds escaping his throat whenever he was happy or curious. He stopped barking like a dog. He stopped wagging his tail. Instead, he began to swing his whole rear like a bear cub when excited. The forest watched, quietly astonished, as one species melted into another. One misty morning, as the group foraged along a ridge, a falcon called overhead. The puppy, now sturdier, more confident, leaped onto a boulder and let out a peculiar sound, part yip, part growl, part joyful howl. Uma responded with a deep chest rumble, a sound she hadn't made since her cubs were newborns. From that moment, the cubs began calling him Rukha, a sound they repeated in low rumbles and snorts. It meant nothing in human language, but in theirs, It meant, the small brave one. Rukha responded every time, ears perked, chest lifted. He had a name now, a bear's name. One evening, a pack of wolves ventured too close. They caught the scent of a pup, not a bear, and circled in the shadows. Uma stood, towering, but Rukha ran forward before she could growl. He planted himself in front of her cubs and let out a deep, foreign bark that startled even the wolves. They paused, confused. The bark wasn't bare, but neither was it a whimper. Rukha stood his ground, shaking but unyielding. Uma stepped forward then, roared once, and the wolves fled. That night, Rukha was bathed in bear licks and cuddled tighter than ever before. He'd earned his place not just as a tag-along, but as a protector. Winter came with silence, deep, soft, endless. Uma dug a den into the earth beneath a fallen tree, and her two cubs curled inside, growing heavy with hibernation. Rukha followed them in, unsure. His body wasn't built for sleep that long, but instinct tugged at him. He lay between the bears, his body pressed to theirs, and dozed in and out for days. He dreamed strange dreams, of running like a dog, howling like a wolf, and standing on two legs with the strength of a bear. He didn't know what he was, only that he belonged. In the safety of fur and breath and warmth, he slept longer than he ever had in his short life. When spring broke the frost, Rukha emerged bigger, stronger, and changed. His coat had thickened. His body had grown wiry and muscular from climbing trees and wading through snow. But more than that, his heart beat in time with the forest. He followed the bears with purpose now, not as a lost pup, but as a sibling. He helped dig dens, chase off eagles from nests, and even caught his first fish, by accident, when he fell into the creek. Uma watched him with a knowing gleam in her eye. He wasn't a bear, but he was no longer a dog either. A year had passed when Eli came back. He carried food for the bears and a crate of supplies, wondering if the pup had survived. He was older now, his hair graying, his back stiffer. But the moment he stepped into the clearing, a low, unfamiliar growl stopped him. From the shadows, a tall, lean figure emerged, part shepherd, part shadow, eyes bright amber and body heavy with muscle. Rukha stood still, watching the man. Recognition sparked. Eli whispered, "It's you." Rukha barked once, then ran. Not away, but toward him. Rukha barreled into Eli like a wave, paws muddy, tail swinging side to side in clumsy, bear-like motions. He didn't lick Eli's face like a typical dog. Instead, he nuzzled him with his snout, bumping his head against Eli's chest the way he would Uma's belly. Eli dropped to his knees, arms wrapping around the pup-now-bear hybrid, laughing and crying at once. "What have they done to you, boy?" he whispered, pulling him close. Rukha let out a deep, happy huff and rolled onto his back, limbs in the air like a goofy bear cub. Eli didn't need an answer. He saw it in Rukha's eyes. He wasn't lost. He had been found. Eli stayed for days, building a stronger shelter, fixing fencing and watching. Rukha kept close to the bears but checked on Eli every hour. The cubs, now enormous, tolerated him as a sibling. Uma treated him like her own. And slowly, Eli understood. The pup wasn't pretending. He truly believed he was a bear. But Rukha hadn't forgotten what he used to be. At night he still sat at Eli's campfire, head on the man's boot, ears twitching with every snap of the flames. The two worlds didn't compete inside him. They lived together. He wasn't confused. He was whole. One early morning, a strange noise rustled through the trees. Rukha perked up. From the shadows emerged a young, starving German shepherd, ribs showing through fur, eyes wild with panic. She had clearly escaped something terrible. Before Eli could move, Rukha stepped forward, not barking, not growling. He lowered himself to the ground, ears flat, then bumped his forehead against hers gently. The dog flinched, but didn't run. Rukha barked softly, wagged his entire rear like a bear cub, and nosed her toward the camp. She followed. The shepherd, named Luma by Eli, recovered quickly. But her presence unsettled Rukha. Not because she was a threat, but because she mirrored a life he had forgotten. She barked like he used to, ran like he used to. She tilted her head and stared at him like a reflection in water. He tried to play with her like a bear cub, pushing, grunting, rolling in the grass, but she didn't understand. And when she tried to tug a rope in her teeth, he didn't know what to do. The dissonance made his heart ache in a way he hadn't expected. Who was he really? That night, Rukha didn't curl beside Uma or Eli. He sat at the edge of the forest, staring into the black. He let out a sound neither bark nor growl, a low, haunting call that echoed across the hills. Luma joined him but kept her distance. She didn't speak. She just sat. Rukha leaned into her, their fur barely touching. He was beginning to understand. He wasn't one thing or the other. He was both. And that truth was not a burden, but a gift. Another fire, this one man-made and closer, forced all creatures into motion. Smoke choked the skies again, and Eli, Uma, her cubs, Rukha, and Luma had to flee the forest. The chaos triggered something deep in Rukha, a need to protect, to lead. As animals scrambled through underbrush, Rukha bounded ahead, barking, grunting, doing both. He herded fawns and foxes like Scout would have. He stood between terrified creatures and falling branches like Buddy used to. He wasn't fast, but he was fearless. Eli, watching from the rear, realized Rukha had become the forest's shepherd. Once the fire passed, Eli made a decision. He wouldn't go back to ranger duty. He would build something new. A place, he said, for those who don't belong anywhere else. A sanctuary. Inspired by what Kota had done in Montana, he began clearing land and drafting plans. Not just for injured animals, but for ones with shattered identities, hybrids of experience, like Rukha. Rukha helped, carrying logs, guarding pups, even comforting a panicked deer fawn with a gentle snout nudge. Luma never left his side. Together, they became the founding souls of the refuge. The first arrival was a blind bear cub who paced in circles, confused and afraid. He had lost his mother in the fire. No one could touch him. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. Then Rukha approached. He didn't make a sound. He just lay beside the cub, slow and steady. The cub froze, then crept closer. Within minutes, the two were curled together. That night, the cub slept without whimpering. Rukha had become the bridge again, between fear and peace. Then came Dagger, a massive husky with scars across his face and a reputation for biting. Everyone said he was unrehabilitatable. But Rukha didn't believe in lost causes. He approached Dagger not with dominance, but with humility. Belly low, tail swinging wide, tongue lolling in an awkward grin. Dagger growled. Rukha rolled onto his back dramatically, paws in the air. Dagger blinked, then, unbelievably, snorted. A tiny sound of confused amusement. Rukha wagged again. This time Dagger didn't growl. Winter blanketed the land again. The sanctuary buzzed with animals of all kinds. Dogs, bears, foxes, raccoons. That Christmas Eve, as snow fell silently, Rukha climbed to the top of the hill and howled. Not as a bear, not as a dog, but something in between. A sound only he could make. From below, animals listened. Then, one by one, began to echo him. Not perfect howls, not roars, but sounds of unity. The sanctuary wasn't just a place. It was a chorus of broken, blended, beautiful hearts. One spring, a family arrived at the sanctuary with a quiet boy named Theo and his puppy, Luna. Theo hadn't spoken since his parents' accident. He clung to Luna's leash like it was a lifeline, but she was terrified. of bears, of other dogs, of the wild. No one could get near her. Rukha watched from a distance, then approached one day while Theo and Luna sat under a tree. He didn't bark or rush. He lay down in the grass a few feet away and rolled over, legs in the air, belly exposed, tongue out in a ridiculous bear cub fashion. Theo giggled. Soft, barely there. Luna tilted her head, then slowly crawled forward. In that moment, something inside them shifted. Trust, like the first green sprout after snow. As the seasons passed, Rukha became the unspoken guide for all new arrivals. He showed orphaned bears how to dig cooling dens. He taught rescued pups how to chase the wind and not their fears. He didn't need to be loud. His calmness was the lesson. Eli watched, hands in his pockets, heart heavy and full. "He's not leading by instinct," he once told a visiting vet. "He's leading by memory, by love." No one argued. They saw it too. Rukha wasn't a shepherd among bears. He was something sacred, an embodiment of belonging. One evening, a massive male bear emerged from the deeper woods, powerful, primal, unsure. He sniffed the air and snorted, clearly uneasy about the mixture of creatures. A hush fell over the sanctuary. Even the cubs stopped playing. Rukha stepped forward. He didn't growl, didn't bark. He stood tall, chest lifted, and let out his signature call. Half bear, half shepherd, all soul. The great bear blinked, then grunted low, not aggressive, acknowledging, and walked on. The tension broke. Rukha had spoken a language no one else could, and it had been heard.
One day, Eli brought out a small box. Inside was a silver medallion with a paw print half dog, half bear. He knelt beside Rukha and fastened it to a leather collar. "For when I'm gone," he said softly, "so they remember who you are and what you gave them." Rukha didn't understand the words, but he leaned into Eli's chest, nuzzled his shoulder, and let out a soft, steady huff. The kind that meant everything. Eli wiped a tear away and whispered, "You were never just a puppy. You were always a miracle." Years later, a husky pup arrived, trembling from abuse, unable to eat or sleep. Rukha lay beside him every night, unmoving, breathing slow and deep until the pup could match it. For weeks, Rukha stayed outside the shelter, his own body becoming the comfort the pup had never known. Then, one morning, Rukha didn't rise. His legs had grown stiff, his eyes a little cloudy. Eli knew. Everyone did. The forest itself seemed to pause. Bears stood at the tree line. Dogs whined at the porch. Birds fell silent. Eli sat beside Rukha, his hand on his thick neck. "You did more than anyone ever asked," he whispered. "You made the world better." Luma, now silver around the muzzle, lay curled against Rukha's side. Theo, now a teenager, knelt and kissed his forehead. Rukha lifted his head one last time, looked at each of them. Then, softly, gently, he let out a long, off-key howl. It rose like smoke, tangled in wind and time. Then he lay still. The howl echoed long after his breath stopped. They buried him beneath the oldest tree where his first den had been. Uma, now older herself, circled the grave 3 times. Bears pawed the earth. Dogs whined. Luma pressed her muzzle to the stone, then howled. One by one, animals lifted their voices, not in sorrow, but in remembrance. Eli placed the collar on a wooden post at the grave's head. Beside it, a sign read, "He was both bark and growl, and the space between. He led with love, and we followed." The sanctuary continued, but everything bore his touch. A blind fox found her way by following the scent trail Rukha once used. New cubs instinctively slept where he had. A skittish dog, once frozen by trauma, now taught others how to trust, because Rukha had taught him. And in Theo, the boy who once said nothing, now stood a young man who spoke softly and loved fiercely. He showed me, Theo once told a visitor, that family isn't what you're born to. It's what you protect. One winter, a new shepherd pup arrived. Shy, uncertain, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. She paused at the foot of Rukha's grave. then sniffed, looked up, and barked, not scared but joyful. From the woods, a new bear cub emerged. The pup didn't run. She dropped to the ground, tail swaying wildly, and rolled over dramatically, just like Rukha used to. The cub blinked, then bounded forward, clumsy and excited. A new bond had begun. Years passed. The sanctuary flourished. New generations of pups and cubs learned side by side, loved side by side. And in every howl, every soft growl, every unlikely friendship born from fear and forged in trust, Rukha lived on. Visitors came from everywhere to see the place where love had rewritten instinct, where a puppy had become a bear, not by changing his body, but by growing a heart big enough for both. Near the entrance, a bronze statue stood of Rukha, head lifted in his half-bark, half-growl. Below it, carved deep into stone, family doesn't need to be of the same species, only the same heart.